Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. We're your hosts. I'm Teresa Conti.
And I'm Ivana Polonio. We talk with people just like you. We have honest conversations about current issues that women and men face and how we pivot to address them in our lives.
This podcast is your companion as you step into a workout or take some time for yourself.
This conversation is being brought to you in two parts. This is the remainder of our conversation with Mickie Murphy. Last week, we talked about her 2023 journey, where she was named president of her company early in the year, and then had a car accident where she spent the second half of the year in the hospital. Listen on as she talks about that experience and how that gave her opportunity and how her positivity came shining through. Absolutely. And even though this was that accident was a tragedy in so many ways, I mean, you're alive, you're doing amazing, you look amazing, you laugh about it, you can tell the story, you can share it, you can do all those things, and I think that's an amazing part. And one of the things we were talking about is about change, how you have to be, I think you and I are a lot alike that way. We were talking about this before about, I like change. For me, change is a challenge. So can you talk a little about how you love change and how that kind of factors in here? Because a lot of people are afraid of change. A lot of people hate change. They don't like that at all.
Well, as Ivana mentioned, I've lived all over. My dad was military, so we lived on both coasts. I was born in Kansas. We were in North Carolina, California. He retired. We were in Miami. So I had lived all over the place by the time I was in elementary school, and continued to just go with the flow. I mean, my life has been that way. I ended up marrying Joe, who's a pastor. Well, where are we going to live? We moved the day we got married. We went honeymoon, came back and loaded up the truck and moved from Memphis, Tennessee to Virginia. So it's another it's just another way of living. You choose to look at what can happen, what is exciting about this. And if you do look at what's the opportunity here, what can be, what can I do with this? This is another opportunity for doing something I want to do. And some people will say I can reinvent myself every time. Well, I don't need to be anybody else, but there might be something else that I might enjoy doing. I'm hoping now that I can do some other things, but I've lived my life just looking forward to that. I love going in and finding something new that I can do. The software changes we were talking about before, Teresa, some people that's just horrible, but they've also chosen to use be in the kind of work where they're doing the same thing all the time. I'm even going to go take another job at a place that has the same software because I know that one. Instead of looking at, oh, we're doing the same thing in all the different places, which is the different button that I get to push. Okay, you're all coming with the same end product. It's just a different way of doing it. Either you can look at the big picture and say, where am I going to go and what is it that I can do there, instead of how am I going to do this every single day? It gets you to the point where you can look and say, oh, there's a way I can handle this today because I'm trying to get to this other place, if that makes sense.
So makes sense. That's what you were so beautifully actually demonstrating when you were talking about what is probably like one of the hardest examples I know of someone looking at a situation that's not working and then having to make the decision to let it go. And this is exactly what you're saying right now. So there's a big picture. Can I keep in mind the big picture and where I want to be and what needs to change? Some of it I can control, some of it I can't control. What is within my domain so that I can get to that place that I am, called to. And what I'm thinking about is this really difficult part of your story where you're talking about, we're all collectively trying to preserve my leg, and it is becoming obvious. 15 surgeries, pain not subsiding, it's getting worse, right? In some ways. And my whole system is mobilized to keep trying to address something that is just not moving in this way. And then you have the courage to say, let's let that go. Let's let it go. And and then the healing happens. But it's like, this is what it's probably one of the most drastic and more specific examples of something that folks are really worried about, even when we're thinking about like trying a new approach in the team
Mhm.
meeting. Could we do this a little differently? Like, we're so afraid of saying this isn't working, let's let it go. And you did it with like one of the most, difficult choices. Um, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about this, like the knowing that you listened to and then being willing to say this
Uh,
isn't right?
yes, I don't even know how to be specific about that, but other than to tell you that I live a faith-based life. Um, the uh, having had the experience of so much change growing up and up to that point, following following what I felt like was leading for the direction of our lives, doing that together, um, and believing uh, that God has something in mind for me. I can tell you that the Cincinnati hospital that I was in is a teaching hospital, and so I had the hordes of doctors coming, like 10 at a time, come in, and I would some days wouldn't know if I had seen any of them before, but the orthopedic surgeons, I did know. I saw them more than the other ones. And this sweet young man, a lot of them were fairly young, uh, had come to me multiple times, in particular about my leg. And he was the one who came to tell me about my leg. And I could see it hurt him to have to tell me. So in a way, I felt like I was relieving him of that pain of having to tell me, because I already knew. I in my mind couldn't put the pieces together. Why did they keep trying to do this? Of course, this is their job. They were trying everything they could, skin grafts, the whole thing, to make this thing work. So by the time we were there, I knew from experience, just having seen other people deal with bodies that weren't whole, or what had somehow changed during their lives. But my mom worked with children, mostly young adults, that had been born blind or had developed blindness in their childhood. So I was a sighted guide from the time I was tall enough to offer an elbow to somebody. I've just been around people with handicaps. That to me was just having a piece of my body that didn't work the same anymore, wasn't an issue. So between the just knowing that I think there's a higher calling, there's something else that I needed to do. I started to tell you about this other doctor who'd come in every day. And one day uh, he came in and he was pricking the back of my hand and pricking the hand. Do you feel this? Do you feel this? And I said, yes. And then he turned his back so I couldn't see my hand. And do you feel this? And I'm saying, yes. Why do you keep doing that? And he said, we didn't expect you to have any feeling in the back of your hand. I do have a numb place right behind my thumb, but he was going on. I said, well, do you know why that is? And he goes, I know, God was holding your head. And I thought, okay, I don't need to say that to him anymore, because there just were so many things that they doctors would come and say, well, we really don't know why this is working, or we don't see accidents like this where there's no head trauma. I had no bruising, not even a knock from my neck up. The rest of me was a wreck. But they said, you don't have any head trauma. We don't understand that. And God was holding my head. It's the only explanation I had for being able to get out of a massive accident like that. Both the people in the other car died. So that, in my mind, there's something else that I need to do. And so God kept me here for that. I just felt like that. So I had complete confidence that I'm here for a reason, and there's no reason for me to not believe that.
Well, I was going to say two things. One is you said that the couple in the other car died, and I think you had told us before that they think it was because they had a medical issue, right? And that's what caused the
Yes.
accident to start with, and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, just to kind of clarify that. But the other thing I was going to say that I was thinking as you were talking was, I think your positive attitude, your positive outlook, helped you recover better.
Oh,
Like, I
absolutely.
think that what we have inside can make or break whatever it is we're doing, we're the problem we're having that
Yep.
positive, because you always have it. It's one of the things I always notice about you and I love about you. You always have that, and I think that really, to me, is probably one of the things that helped you heal so well. Sure, you were in the
Uh-huh.
hospital a long time. Sure, you had a lot to go through. Sure, you had all these things going on. But right, I mean, that to me
Absolutely.
is an amazing piece of your story, honestly.
And that's, I absolutely believe it. And that's the the positive attitude. Again, that's something you choose to have every single day. And you can choose to make everyone in the world miserable around you and to be miserable yourself. That's a choice. You can be miserable, or you can look for what's good and beautiful and true, and look for those things. It's a choice every single day. And the people the people that you will draw to you when you have that attitude are people who are looking for that. And you've heard me say this too. I had the doctors would say it as they came and did rounds through my room, that this is such a peaceful room. This is really just an oasis. But they were on their way through. The nurses would congregate in my room. There, I would look up and there'd be three. Hi, I know you're not my patient today, but I'm just coming back to see my Mickie, or to see you. And my friend, who's has the same outlook on life, was staying with me for about 6 weeks, and they would just come say hello because they wanted somewhere quiet and some place uplifting, and they knew that we'd welcome them and say hello. And how's your day? I had a nurse invite me to a wedding she was having in Ireland. I mean, it's just, because I would look at them and ask them how was their day and want to know how they're doing and what was good and what,
That was genuine. That wasn't just
yes,
talk. That is a genuine conversation.
right.
And it's amazing. Your whole story to me is amazing. So I'm gonna let Ivana say whatever she wants and to ask our final question, as we're because I think we could talk all day for sure.
I think so.
Ivana.
Yes, I want to comment and then roll into a question about this. Well, what I'm noticing, you say two things that are so, for me, deeply related, and I'm wondering if you can help us connect them too. On the one hand, you talked about being held by God, and you said, my head held by God, and that's, I just know, I have no reason. You said, I have no reason not to believe in that. And at the same time, you're saying, so you're talking about, something that there is just words fail us as we start to talk about it. Then you talk about choice, free will, personal responsibility for tuning into like which attitude am I choosing? And I really love that, because for me too, I mean, it's like these are not separate things that we need to balance out or choose between. Big presence that I can choose to tune into, always there, but I can be completely disconnected from, tuned out of. And I love your focus on this personal responsibility, and it's a choice. And the highlight of like it's a choice, even with the sarcasm, like which joke are you telling? Are you telling the high frequency joke that's really connecting you to this, bigger experience of a bigger life, of a journey, of an adventure? Or are you choosing a cutting, edgy, sarcastic, like a simple like that? And then you gave us some examples of like much bigger choices, like which life am I choosing? Which disposition am I choosing? You talked about crawling into a dark space, right? So does that resonate for you when I'm, drawing that like relationship and the connection between these two different states? One of, kind of like surrendering to a
Mm,
bigger presence, and then the other one, and I'm taking personal responsibility here and choosing.
yep, absolutely. Um, believing or not believing is a choice too. I grew up with an agnostic father and a very Christian faith-based mother, and my folks were divorced when I was early teen, and the gift my father gave me was, don't believe anything you can't touch or see. And I was in my 30s when I finally just said, you know what, I don't have to be in control of everything, and I'm not, whether I believe I am or I don't believe it. And it was at that point that I said, this makes sense to me, that there is a God, a loving God, and I don't have any control over what he does or what is on this earth. I have only control over whether I choose to follow that or not, and my attitude about my life. So absolutely, those things are concisely attached to each other. I choose to follow God, and I also choose to let that show through me, and to love the people around me. And that's the other thing that you probably heard me say, is I choose to love my peeps. I have had one of my team tell me before, you are always choosing the nice things to say about somebody. I said, I choose to love my employees in spite of themselves sometimes, but I choose to love them, because that's the only way that I can live in general. And sometimes that's our hardest task, is to choose to love somebody in spite of who they are. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to fire the people who aren't doing their jobs, or take care of real life business situations or whatever, but you can sure be kind when you let somebody go, and give them kindness where they need it, in spite of the situation that you're in. And hopefully that's what you see in me, and that's what you see that is light, because that is I'm doing
Well, I
my
would
job,
say
if it is.
that's absolutely what I see in you. So, and I can see Eva smiling. So I think she's in agreement.
For
Okay,
sure.
so we're less than a year since you were out of the hospital, because you were out of the hospital in December of 23. Now it's, we're taping this, it's August of 2024. You just had another surgery in July, which you have now are back from, which is amazing. So as our last question, we always ask this: how is this pivot a step forward? And I think I already know your answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Oh my goodness. How's it a step forward? It's a step. Is it a step forward? It's a different change for me, because now you're not talking about the last surgery specifically. You're
No,
just talking
I'm
about
talking
in
about
general.
the whole event, yeah.
I'm sorry, my lights just changed here. The whole thing is just giving me an opportunity to look at life from a different perspective. What am I doing? What's up now? What do I get to change? And as I look at what's happening and what can I do, I'm sorry, I'm looking around as I think. Another thing that was happening before the accident, we call that BTA, was I really felt prompted, and I'll tell you, I felt I was being prompted by God to speak publicly. And being part of different conferences where I was responsible for getting speakers and being in touch with their agencies and watching this process, it was just like I was physically being poked in the arm. You need to speak. You need to speak. And I would go to my husband and say, I feel this so strongly, but I have no idea what I'm supposed to say. Is it toward the Christian audience? Is it faith-based? Is it to secular audience? I don't really know. People really don't want public speakers for retirement plan stuff. I mean, we get to talk to our own peeps, but they don't pay for that. So I was really, it was probably a couple years that I was feeling this. And this probably the second week I was in the hospital, I looked at Joe and I said, I know what I'm supposed to talk about now. And he just kind of grinned. I said, I would have taken the facts, but this
Yeah.
is where we are.
What,
But,
100%.
yes,
100%.
2 weeks later, my leg was amputated. And again, a little bit of black humor in my family. I said, I have the visual now. So I know I need to get up front so that I can talk about all of this. And people will look at me and say, what's happened? And I get to tell them the story. And so I'm excited to have the opportunity to tell the story. I feel very much that I'm called to talk about faith and change and resilience, and how do you prepare and live the life that leads you to be able to bounce back. We're born to be resilient. We are born where we can't even roll over, and then we roll over, then we take steps, then we walk. We're born to get back up when we fall. We're called to that as people, to reach out, do new things, and keep going. And when we let that die, we let part of us die. When we become stagnant, we lose a piece of ourselves. So I'm excited to be able to talk about that and say, look, don't talk about changing software being tough. Everybody's got their own stuff. So no, I don't like when people say to me, oh, what I've been through is nothing like what you have. I don't want to compare. I'm just saying this, I came back from this. You can come back from something that seems so hard, a relationship that's miserable that you need to walk out of. You can do it. You can figure out how to get a different job. You can figure out how to do something different. There's a way through it. Sometimes it's a curvy path, and sometimes it's going to hurt, but you can do it. You can go do something else. I hope that I can do that as a public speaker.
Those
I'm
seeing
looking for
me
the
on
opportunity.
YouTube see how excited I am for you, because and the story really, like you said, is not about the accident. It's about all the other things and all the other things everybody can learn from that, including you. You've learned from this, right? We all learn from things that are hard and things that we have to do and change, and all things out of our control. We learn from those, and those are great learning. So I am super excited to see what your next step is, and to be in the audience when you give that first keynote address. So I'll be excited to be there. One of my favorite guests ever. We've had a lot of great guests, but I love this story. I love this story. I love your resilience. I love everything about this. So thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
I have a post-scriptum question. It's like
Okay.
behind the scenes. I don't know if this gets added right here in this spot, or maybe we find some fun way to add it and tack it on someplace else. Can you tell us, how'd you do it today? So we're talking about keynote like it's something in the future. You just talked about your story. You just
Agreed.
stepped into teacher mode, and you just did it. This was so hard. And, Teresa and I both have some trainings that allow us to observe how a person going through an account of something that was really difficult, what's happening with your physiology. So we witnessed you, first you were talking about the presidency and that difficult conversation where you're raising the question of like, hey, what can I be doing or not doing? And then you shift, and then you start to talk about the accident, and you walked yourself through the whole experience here with us, remembering it, witnessing it here in your mind's eye, and then you unpacked it, thought it, drew conclusions from it. How did you do it? How'd you do it today?
Same way I did it for Sway. I'm a storyteller by nature. And I spent 4 months lying in a hotel bed thinking I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to write a book, which is next on the agenda. And how do I want to tell these stories? So there are bits of it that I've not known, like having Katie Boyer Malloy tell me that Joe called her because I told her to. I don't remember that at all. But those the other pieces of it, I literally would lay in bed and think, okay, how's this translate to business? Because there were so many things. I knew that I needed to tell this story somehow, and that this was part of what I wanted to do. But that, I don't know, it's part of also looking at where this is going, what's the big picture, standing back and saying, okay, here's what happened. This is the physical part of it. This is not who I am. It was not vindictive. Nobody did this to me. I am not a victim. This is a thing that happened to me, and I'm on the other side of it. What's the next thing I need to do? So there are other things I have lived through in my life. This is not the first time that I've had something hard to do. This is the most physically damaging thing I've ever had happen. Obviously, it's just a different hard thing. So it's a funny question to me because I've done it the same way I've done other things. I just go in order and pull out the pieces, and it's linear. But it's interesting to even have you ask me.
Right?
Yeah.
This is a demonstration of what it means to be showing up, showing up for what is happening moment by moment, not avoiding it, meeting what is, and then, open to learning and asking, okay, what's the next organic step? What's the next organic step? With, with love and purpose and on purpose. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's a fun question.
Well, thank you again for being here today. We've really enjoyed it and taking your time. And I think there's a lot of lessons for everybody to be learned. So thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week on the next episode of Step Into the Pivot.
And remember, if you have a pivot, step into it. And if you have a good story, let us know about it. We'd love to welcome you on our show and hear it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mickie.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Step Into the Pivot. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation. Remember, life is a series of pivots, and it's in those moments of change that we truly grow.
If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, make sure to check out our websites. You'll find additional resources, behind-the-scenes content, and more details about our incredible guests. We love hearing from listeners, so reach out with your thoughts, questions, or your own pivot stories.
To keep the conversation going, be sure to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram, where we share updates, quotes, and engage with our amazing community.
If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback makes a difference, and it helps us bring you meaningful conversations. We're signing off, reminding you that every pivot is a step forward. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Step Into the Pivot.